Before the college entrance exam, I secretly took the love letter that the school hottie had written to his first love, which ended up preventing them from getting together. She's hated me her whole life for it. When she found out I had a crush on her, she even said I was jealous and manipulative so she could never like me. Later, we both died in a car accident. Before she passed, she said if she had another chance, she wished I wouldn't mess up her relationship with Eric, as she wished I got another chance and didn't take the letter. She gave up multiple choice questions on the science test to enroll in the same school as Eric. When the exam results came out, Tina and Eric got together. At the graduation party, Tina's romantic gesture of giving up those questions for love became legendary. People called her a pure love warrior. I sat quietly in the corner sipping juice while they were surrounded by the crowd. Next to me, Jack was baffled and shook. Is she nuts? She threw her future away for what could be a shaky future with Eric? Yes, this time she chose Eric over her future. Last time, I interfered to choose her future by secretly taking the letter, and all I got was her lifelong hatred. Even after she realized I liked her, she looked at me with disdain. Ben, I'm not interested in jealous, manipulative people. Your affection disgusts me. I hadn't exactly hidden the letter from her. I gave it back the night the exams were over. But when she went to Eric with the letter, he rejected her. Tina, with our scores so different, we won't even end up at the same school. How could we stay together? For years long distance? I need a girlfriend I can be with any time. Can you do that? A shattered Tina glared at me when she returned. The next day, her parents came to me, worried as she was planning to change her college choice. They begged me to talk to her. I wasn't surprised. But when I found Tina, she laughed bitterly before I could say anything. What is it, Ben? One stolen letter wasn't enough? Planning to ruin things again? Standing in the stairwell with a breeze passing by, it felt chilly despite the sunny weather. I looked at her restless and agitated and said, Tina, it's been 12 years to reach today. Eventually, under her parents' pressure, Tina didn't change her plans and couldn't get back together with Eric. Since then, I became the villain who kept them apart and bore her every resentment. Until our last moments in the car, she blamed me, pleading with a hoarse voice in the bloody wreckage. If I get another chance, Ben, please stop meddling with our fate. So, when I got a second chance, I did as she wished. I didn't take the letter, and Tina saw it. Understanding Eric liked her too, but was worried about the distance. So, she risked everything, skipped the science questions, losing over 100 points but successfully ending up close enough in scores to be with Eric. When people had a few drinks, someone mentioned me almost in passing. At first, I thought Ben and Tina would end up together. Childhood friends, both excellent students. But Tina quickly shut that down, probably afraid Eric might misunderstand. We're just old friends, she said, detached. I smiled silently, repeating the words, old friends. Tina was right. We've known each other forever. From elementary school to graduation, we were always in the same class. Besides my parents, Tina spent the most time with me. I saw her pull all-nighters over a math problem. She saw me take exams with a high fever. No one understood better how much work went into those seemingly easy top 3 scores. The day we got into high school, ranking first and second in the city, Tina pointed to our pictures on the honor roll and asked, 3 years later, this will be us. Ben, are you confident? The summer evening sky burned bright behind her. Cicadas screamed their hearts out, and I clutched my books, looking at her. Tina, it's a promise. Back then, all we saw in each other's eyes was our hopeful future and firm resolve. But soon enough, Eric came into Tina's view. During a time when most students were messy and burned out chasing their dreams, Eric stood out, unbelievably handsome. At the school festival not long after we enrolled, Eric stood center stage in a white suit, like a moonbeam. Everyone noticed him. His name was on every student's lips. For many girls, including Tina, he became their first crush. The first time I sensed something was off was when she returned from delivering papers to the next class. She was blushing and sat down, but for 4 periods, she only completed 1 problem on her test. The scratch paper filled with equations had 3 glaring letters. Eric. She scribbled over them, trying to hide what was clear to see. Later, I heard Eric had teased her when she delivered those papers. They accidentally bumped heads and he caught her. Flustered, she said, "Watch out." Eric grinned, "Sorry, big brain. And you're really pretty." Everyone around roared with laughter. Usually composed and stoic, Tina couldn't keep her cool. Our personalities, Tina's and mine, are quite similar. Rational and calm, like warm water. Eric was the opposite, intense and passionate, like a fizzing tablet dropped in that water. And a good-looking one, too. So, it didn't surprise me that Tina was drawn to him. Just like in many rom-coms and novels, the main male and female characters often have contrasting personalities. The idea is that people get attracted to those who are different from them. There are just so many examples. The CEO and the Cinderella, the nerd and the underachiever, or the aloof beauty and the warm-hearted sunshine. Back then, I thought Tina would stay grounded no matter how much she was drawn to Eric. But she, usually rational and composed, rebelled for him once. Truth is, I have no clue how they got so close. I was too caught up in my hectic schoolwork, and our chats mostly circled around solving problems or prepping for the next exam. By the time I noticed how close Tina and Eric had gotten, Eric was already casually calling her a bookworm, a top student, and her reactions showed she was used to it. I began to spot Tina leaving for half an hour every lunchtime to tutor Eric and having plans on weekend mornings, which were actually meetups organized by Eric. I realized Tina had fallen for him, but that didn't distract me from my studies. Not until the national physics competition in sophomore year started closing in. Our school was selecting one student to send, and during the last elimination round, Tina wasn't there. Eric had fallen ill and fainted. Despite everything, Tina chose to stay with him at the hospital all afternoon. I can't exactly describe how I felt back then. I just remember arriving at the hospital, seeing her, and all my emotions collapsed into a confused Tina. She leaned against the hallway wall with a nonchalant look and simply said, "I've followed the rules all my life. Can't I rebel just once?" So, she gave up all that effort, forgetting the nights she spent working through problems while sick. For a moment, looking at the graceful girl in front of me, she seemed almost like a stranger, and I felt an unexpected need to cry. But I didn't say anything. Still, I knew her actions were not a good sign. So, when she faced another life choice, I made it for her. I took Eric's love letter meant for her before the final exams. By then, I had mentally prepped for Tina to confess to Eric after graduation and for them to be together, and I was ready to offer my congratulations. But I didn't expect to run into Eric placing the letter while I returned to the classroom for a notebook during a top 100 students meeting. The conversation he was having with his friend was like a punch to the gut. The whole reason he got close to Tina was a bet to hit on the top student in the grade. He ended up genuinely liking her but felt the gap between them was too wide and didn't want to deal with the long distance. So he kept insisting they were just classmates. That letter was his way to show he wanted to go to the same college as her and be with her. There was a time when I'd confidently say Tina wouldn't risk her future for anyone. But in that moment, I wasn't so sure. To avoid that 1% chance, I took the letter after they left. In countless sarcastic remarks from Tina since then, I constantly wonder if I had done the right thing. Once, I tried talking to her calmly. "Tina, even if you saw it earlier, wouldn't you still go after your future instead of being with him?" She laughed coldly and interrupted with firm certainty. "Ben, I would." Watching her, I silently realized I had indeed messed up, royally. As our reunion was winding down, Eric held Tina's hand and came over with a bright smile. "Ben, you've known Tina for 18 years. Your relationship is different, even if it's just as friends. You'll wish us well, right?" I glanced at the smiling girl beside him, politely corrected him, saying, "I haven't been with Tina for 18 years. We just happened to walk the same path for that long. From now on, it'll be different. Many have already wished you happiness today. My good wishes are for your brilliant future." I was sincere. After all, we come from humble backgrounds, working hard for a promising future. In a previous life, Tina went to a top university, became the prize student of a respected physics professor, met influential mentors, and made numerous like-minded friends. With the best resources, She thrived in her passion for physics, frequently seeing her name in academic journals and confidently speaking at research conferences. A bright future indeed. Her only regret was probably the first love, Eric. It was an obsession of hers. At occasional reunions, people mentioned his new relationships or how he was confessed to by some heiress. The last I heard, he was getting married. That night, Tina drank herself into a stupor with friends and knocked on my door afterward. My parents weren't home, and she stormed in with sarcasm. "Ben, you must be thrilled, right? He's getting married. Happy now?" I stood silently by the sofa, listening to her vent, then offered a glass of water. She didn't take it. Honestly, I was exhausted watching her emotions turn from volatile to sleepy. I casually threw a blanket over her and went back to my room. Later, I got a juicy gossip update through Jack's Tangled network on Twitter. Apparently, the girl Eric was marrying was someone he met at a friend's birthday party, a wealthy heiress who fell for him at first sight. During the chase, Eric had a girlfriend, but it took considerable wooing and gifts from the heiress to win him over. I looked down in silence, suddenly curious about what would have happened if Tina really gave up her future for Eric. I never thought I'd find out the path of a different choice, but here I was, back to the past, starting over. Tina was finally getting what she wanted. Watching them kiss in the center of the crowd with everyone cheering, I finished my juice and then turned to leave. I had imagined this choice many times. Tina always dreamed that even if she and Eric went to the same school, she could reach the same level based on her ability. But honestly, who knows the answer? Tina, I'm eager to see what happens. This time around, nothing changed except for Tina's choice. I still got into the same college with the same score as my past life and was accepted into the math department I'd aimed for. During the whole vacation before we headed off to college, Tina and I didn't see each other. She was off with Eric on a graduation trip. Meanwhile, I took up a tutoring job for middle schoolers. Occasionally, I'd run into Tina's parents while stepping out. They would greet me with a bittersweet smile, silver strands peppering their hair. I guess they'll never know why Tina, who was always in the top 3 and talented, suddenly failed in the college entrance exam. They'd probably worry she was too upset, trying everything to comfort her, smiling in front of her, and encouraging her to travel and relax. I couldn't tell if it was better for them to know the truth or remain in the dark. My heart went out to them because, aside from my own parents, they were the adults I'd grown up with the most. For a long time, because of my parents' work, I had lunch at Tina's place. Her mom always made my favorite sweet and sour ribs and knew all my preferences. She'd remind Tina at school to look out for me so I wouldn't get bullied by other kids. Back then, Tina would hold a watermelon slice and assure her mom, "Don't worry, he won't get bullied." Even though I was a quiet, steady guy with good grades, and I got along with my classmates, Tina often got left out because she was different from other girls. But she didn't mind since we were together. I always thought we'd walk this path side by side. Didn't expect her to turn away halfway. The next time I saw Tina was at the train station, heading off to school. In the past, we were in the same city. Now, I was going north while she and Eric headed south. In the bustling waiting area, she sat with Eric. As I walked past, I caught them watching a video of a relationship coach analyzing 10 signs a girlfriend loves her boyfriend. She nodded in agreement to Eric's comments. After 2 months outdoors, her pale skin had tanned, and she had Eric's initials tattooed on her arm, matching couples' outfits with him. Slowly, she was drifting away from the Tina I remembered. She noticed my gaze, looked up, and across a row of seats, I openly met her eyes. I smiled, a small gesture of greeting. She stared for a second, reflexively moving her tattooed arm back, and when Eric turned to ask something, she quickly looked away, possibly saying, "Nothing." Just then, my train arrived. As I boarded and moved through the queue, I felt a strong gaze on my back. I knew who it was, but I didn't look back. Later, after finding my seat, I received a message from Tina. Seeing our last conversation from months ago made me pause. This would probably be the new pattern until one ordinary day, our words would be the last we ever exchanged. Reflecting, I read her new message. A short line, "Ben, I wish you a bright future too. Of course, my future would be bright. I'd step onto a new platform, see a bigger world, surrounded by top talents from across the country, entering a world different from before. There'd be countless others who were hardworking and gifted, humble yet strong. Once I broke free from one school's narrow view, I realized Eric wasn't that extraordinary. It was just a filter that people chasing dreams used to mask their own shine. Now, stripped of the same old facade, stepping into their fields, everyone was a gem. After that, I got busy with my major classes, discussing topics with teachers and classmates, joining various competitions. I even got into volunteering, learned to paint, and drew portraits of every cat and dog on campus, naming them all. Every holiday when I returned home, our schedules seemed to magically miss each other. I'd always head back to the old place for Chinese New Year, so during the entire 4 years we didn't meet once. We met again at a class reunion 4 years later. For years can change a lot. The once young and naive teens were now mature and steady, discussing future plans, sharing competition stories, and talking about job offers. They were all adorned with prestigious school credentials, holding numerous awards, not yet in the workforce, but with a bright future ahead. Because of traffic, I was the last to arrive. They pulled me excitedly into the group, and given our similar experiences, I quickly blended into the conversation. While discussing the past 4 years of life, someone playfully pointed at me, pretending to be upset. You all don't know, back in sophomore year, we had a joint debate with several universities, and Ben here was my opponent. He thrashed us with his flawless logic. Couldn't feel any camaraderie. I laughed. Thank you. She wouldn't let go, teasing. Who knew? Ben, back then you were always so quiet and gentle, but in debates you're sharp and relentless. I'm curious, do you argue with your girlfriend like that? The comment stirred laughter, and then someone suddenly turned to Tina, like they just remembered something, and asked, Hey, why haven't we seen Eric? Our pure love champion, the campus heartthrob, didn't come with you? It was only then that I noticed Tina, who had been sitting in the corner quietly. Like everyone else, she had changed a lot. That humility and confidence in her eyes were gone. Honestly, even though she still seemed quiet and introverted, sitting there now, she felt out of place, like an overlooked outsider. The girls who once admired her as the pure love champion had moved on to better opportunities and widened perspectives. Bringing up this topic again seemed a little different, like there was now an undertone of mockery in their words. After all, she used to be a top player among them, and now it seemed she didn't even have anything to discuss with them. Jack, holding his drink, sighed lightly behind me. Turns out reality is what it is, not like those TV dramas. 4 years after a frame could mean ultimate success for the heroine in a drama. But in reality, Tina hasn't gotten prettier or more successful, and she's fallen behind everyone here. Success can't just come down to hard work. Things like platform, resources, connections, talent, luck, and the right environment are all crucial. So, it's no surprise that Tina, who was renowned in the physics community in the past life, is almost unrecognized now. When Tina, suddenly questioned, looked over at me after a few seconds, she said in a calm tone, we broke up. A few days after the party, my buddy Jack came to spill the tea on Tina and Eric. Apparently, shortly after starting college, under Eric's influence, Tina not only learned to cook and do crafts, but she even got into fights with other girls for Eric. I remembered seeing Tina, who rarely tweeted about anything other than physics, suddenly posting Eric's photos or videos every couple of days during that time. I thought back then, true love can really change someone. But once the honeymoon phase ended, things got plain. Tina got busy with her courses, and Eric met more people at different events. They occasionally clashed on differences of opinion. Eric complained that Tina had no time for him due to her competitions, wanting her to hang out with him despite her busy schedule. Tina didn't get the whole fuss about the first cup of tea in autumn Eric wanted so badly. She didn't understand why that particular cup, which could be bought any day, needed a special ritual. Minor disagreements piled up over time and eventually led to a Cold War. Jack got more worked up as he talked, his tone tinged with sarcasm and resentment. How much of their so-called true love was really about love? When the novelty wears off, conflicts only grow. And meeting more exceptional people doesn't help. Their relationship was built on one-sided sacrifices, just waiting for a trigger to explode. So when a rich and attractive heir pursued Eric, he grew even more dissatisfied with Tina. Eric initially loved Tina's achievements, but in a bigger world, being top in class isn't the only measure of worth. Frustrated with their fading relationship and Eric's subtle dissatisfaction, Tina finally brought up the fact that she gave up complex subjects in exams for him. Eric only scoffed. "For me? Tina, that was your choice, wasn't it? Don't blame me for the consequences of your decision." That was it, and they broke up. Eric quickly moved on to the rich heir, closing the chapter on their legendary romance. I lazily flipped through a magazine, responding casually to Jack's passionate rant. "Oh, really?" He paused a few moments, then sighed. "Honestly, as someone who's been her friend for 6 years, I'm disappointed. Even if she had waited to see her scores before making college decisions, why leave no way out? I wonder if she regrets her choices now that the love she once sacrificed for lasted only 4 years." I smiled, calm and collected. It's her choice. Whether she regrets it or not, no one else will bear the consequences now. But back in our past life, living with her constant resentment and disdain, I truly regretted it. Back then, living in the same city for work and studies, our paths often crossed in academic circles. At home, we maintained a polite front for our parents, keeping up appearances. But each encounter meant facing her sneers. I think her hatred peaked when she found out about my crush. I'd always kept diaries, and spending so much time together, I wrote about her a lot. Little things like us hiking and her carrying me home after I twisted my ankle, or her standing in punishment beside me when I overslept. She'd lend me materials I forgot, and we'd hit the library together, compete on behalf of our school, console each other when our ranks slipped, or argue over solving problems. Everything between us was ordinary. I never had any dramatic moments to stir large emotions, so I didn't realize when I started liking her. It wasn't until that day when she pointed to the photo on the bulletin board and asked if I was confident that I realized there were hints of liking her scattered throughout my diary. I admired her determination to chase her dreams, her glowing eyes when facing challenges, and the way she'd look at me when I was discouraged and ask, "So, are you stopping here, Ben?" That night, for the first time, I wrote in my diary, "I like Tina." Yes, I like Tina. But then Eric came along and got closer to Tina. We didn't talk much, except through our mutual connection with Tina. So, I mentioned it once in my diary. Tina likes Eric. Later things got tense between me and Tina because of the letter. Every argument chipped away at my feelings for her, much like how a crush can appear out of nowhere. I thought my secret crush would never be known, but I didn't expect her to see my diary when she came over to help my dad set up a new bookshelf. To this day, I clearly remember her holding up the diary, giving me a sarcastic look. She asked in a chilly tone, "You like me?" I looked at the diary in her hand, paused, then admitted calmly, "Yes, I did." Maybe my calmness annoyed her, because she suddenly threw the diary at me and yelled, accusingly, "So you took the love letter?" The hardcover grazing my cheek hurt a bit. But in that moment, I realized I didn't like her anymore. I wasn't sad about her carelessly tossing aside memories of my crush. I picked up the diary and dusted it off, seriously apologizing. "I'm sorry, Tina. I shouldn't have taken the love letter, shouldn't have disrupted your relationship, and shouldn't have liked you without asking." But she wasn't satisfied, scoffing before walking away, leaving behind words that stuck with me. Jealous, manipulative. Honestly, while I did like her, I valued our friendship more than a fleeting crush. Taking the letter wasn't to stop her and Eric. I just hoped she could achieve what matched her 12 years of effort without interference. So I delayed her choice for a few days. I was never jealous of Eric. I knew you can't force feelings, so if she ended up with Eric, I'd offer my congratulations and continue on my own path. I didn't need to be with Tina. Now it's like I've corrected past mistakes and am on the path I was meant to take. Even though I didn't take the letter this time, I didn't intentionally distance myself from this life's Tina, at least not until after the college entrance exams. Then, we ended up in different circles for 4 years, so when we met at a gathering, we didn't talk. This kind of drifting apart didn't bother me, so I didn't reach out to ease things. Until her mom was hospitalized, and my mom brought me to visit. After leaving some fruit, I sat in the sterilized, smelling hospital room, listening to my mom chat with Tina's mom about life. I went outside for a call and met Tina by the flower beds. She wore a black coat, exhaustion etched into her features. I paused for a moment, recognizing that familiar look. She showed it when research wasn't going well or she couldn't mend things with Eric. Back then, she was successful but worked hard behind the scenes. The academic journey was tough and solitary. As for Eric, Tina reached out to him after some success, and they reconnected. But most of her connections were in the city where she studied, and with much of her time in the lab, she had less advantage compared to wealthy, leisurely peers also pursuing Eric. After half a year of trying, Eric still turned her down, quietly exiting her life. Their story hung like the unattainable moon. My mistake in taking the letter haunted me, because she believed if they'd been in the same school, things would have ended differently. Now, looking at her, I didn't know why she had that look again. When our eyes met, she shut off her phone, stood up, and walked over with a dry voice. Last time we met, I didn't get to say hi. Ben, you've changed a lot. You're more handsome and accomplished. She paused, looked a bit guilty, and apologized. I was immature back then, worried he'd misunderstand, afraid our relationship would be affected, so I downplayed it. That was childish of me. I waited quietly for her to finish and then smiled, replying graciously. It's okay, Tina. We were always just friends. What else could we have been? Her face tensed and then fell, and she looked at the fading sunset, laughing self-deprecatingly, saying, I've thought countless times about what it'd be like if I'd never seen that letter. I followed her lead, speaking lightly. You couldn't miss it. It was placed right there. She suddenly turned her head. What if someone took it? I paused, unable to respond before she asked. Ben, if you'd seen it first, would you have taken it? I looked closely at her, searching for something, but saw nothing. Calmly, I shook my head. No, I wouldn't have taken it. We both turned away, falling into silence. She suddenly smiled, seeming relieved, and said repeatedly, That's good, that's good. She started talking about how she keeps having the same dream after we broke up. It's about me taking her love letter before the college entrance exam. In the dream, she never got together with him and hated me for it her whole life. Eventually, we both died in a car crash caused by me. The blood felt so real, like it truly happened. I uttered something and was about to head back to the hospital room. I softly said to her, It's all fake. Don't worry about it. But deep down, I knew it was real. The crash happened on Eric's wedding day. Before that, we were invited to our old high school for a reunion. Our former class teacher wanted us to film a video for the younger students, with Always on the Road as the theme. So, I got in Tina's car to check out the filming location. I was following our pre-planned script, sitting in the front seat. I was adjusting the equipment and chatting with Tina about the camera angles. It was our first peaceful moment since the college entrance exam. The shoot went well. On the way back, I quietly rested against the window, just watching the scenery pass by. Suddenly, I heard Tina's phone ring. She instinctively answered it on speaker. Then Eric's voice came through. Tina, today's my wedding. I forgot to send you an invite. We've known each other for so long, we're friends. I'll text you the details. The call ended, and the car became silent. I was considering asking to get out and grab a ride back myself. But she suddenly turned the car around. I knew she was going. But then, bam, we got hit by a truck. That feeling of internal disarray really hurt. But after the numbness, I only felt relieved. Before I lost consciousness, I heard Tina weakly call my name and say that if she could do it over again, she'd want me not to ruin her and Eric's relationship. When I opened my eyes again, I was back to the start of my freshman year of high school. I didn't know what Tina's "that's gooder" the recurring dream meant, but it didn't matter anymore. The second time I saw Tina was when her mom got out of the hospital. I brought soup from my mom and chatted a bit. We reminisced about the old days. She pulled out some old paper photos and picked one from when Tina and I won a prize in a junior high competition. She said, "Time flies. I remember when your moms were in the hospital ready to give birth. You were born just a day before Tina. And now, look, over 20 years have gone by. Ben, you were as handsome as a kid. And Tina's dad really liked you back then. You were so quiet, just smiling all the time while he held you. As you grew, you and Tina were inseparable. We all thought someday you'd end up together." I politely smiled and said, "Auntie, those were childhood days, not to be taken seriously." She patted my hand and sighed, "Tina isn't lucky enough to be with you now. She's no match for you." I chuckled softly, wanting to tell her she had it wrong. "Auntie, it's not about who matches with who. It's about walking the same path." She misunderstood and said, "Tina told me she's studying for the grad school entrance exams. It's the same school she aimed for right in your college town. Take care of her, will you?" I kindly interrupted her, "Auntie, I'm heading abroad for studies. Oh, and I have a girlfriend now. I haven't had the chance to tell my folks." Tina walked into the kitchen to wash her hands. I wasn't sure if she overheard. She stood there with her back to me, still for a long time. The air was tense for a few seconds. Tina's mom tried to lighten the mood by asking about my girlfriend. I smiled and talked about how we met, a girl I competed with. She's gentle, smart, disciplined, wins awards every year, excels in all competitions. She does calligraphy, plays chess, even drums. I pulled out my phone and showed a picture of her giving a speech at an academic forum. I told her, "She's someone I really like and my fellow path walker." That pretty much ended the conversation. On my way home, I thought about Tina standing at the sink, her sleeves rolled up. I noticed faint scars on her forearms, where a tattoo was removed. For a moment, it felt like time intermingled. Those old scribbled names on scrap paper marked the beginning for them. Now, the faded scar was a sign of their end. The hormones that sparked during that youth finally receded like the tide. My tangled past with Tina was wrapping up here. I did wonder what kind of fate awaited her once she chose another path. I was curious to see how she'd reach her former glory amid today's fierce competition, and how her family, after investing so much in her dream, would continue to support her. Truth is, I hoped she'd struggle just to prove my past actions were right. But I knew I was wrong. Someone once said, "The best etiquette is to mind your own business." Stepping in means you have to bear responsibility. So this time I stayed in my lane. I didn't meddle in any of Tina's choices. In the past, she regretted not being with Eric. I didn't know if she'd regret the 21 exam questions she left unanswered this time. But the marvel of fate is there's never a perfect choice. No matter what, there will be regrets. What matters is handling the consequences. At this point, I lost all interest in Tina's future. Life is long after all. Whether she rebounds back to the top or fades into the crowd, it's irrelevant to me now. I stopped looking back and kept moving forward. I was studying abroad for 3 years. My girlfriend and I were doing long distance. Jack called me once and jokingly asked, "Ben, you've been away for 3 years. Aren't you worried the spark with your girlfriend will go out?" I was writing my report, calmly replying, "Even though we're not in the same place, we're headed toward the same goal, and our souls will only get closer." He made a suggestive noise, then switched topics like something popped into his head. "Remember Eric? He was chased with loads of money by the daughter of a nouveau riche who fell in love at first sight. Their wedding was grand, inviting tons of former classmates, with everyone watching in envy. But not even 2 years later, she started looking for someone new, younger, and more handsome. So she went on spending money to pursue him. Eric made a fuss after being cheated on, but it only led to talks of divorce. He didn't agree, and now they're still stuck in this divorce mess. I was half listening when I suddenly realized Eric's face was fading from my memory. I only remembered he was good-looking, but nothing else stood out. Even when he was with Tina, nothing seemed special to me. I never saw him as a rival. We were always from 2 different worlds. Jack noticed I was losing interest, so he switched the topic again. Tina tried for grad school twice and missed by just 0.1 points each time. Really bad luck. After finishing the report, I took a deep breath and casually replied, "Oh, wish her luck." Not long after, one day, a message popped up and got retracted. It was from Tina, but I didn't ask about it. When I got back to the country, some old friends threw me a welcome back party, and Tina was there. She asked if I saw that message. I shook my head and said I was sleeping because it was the middle of the night. She gave a bitter smile and explained, "It was a dream, but I mistook it for reality. Glad I didn't disturb you." Keeping a friendly smile, I realized she told a pretty awkward lie. Her middle of the night was daytime for me, but it didn't matter anymore, just like the withdrawn message. Then, "Did you like me?" That answer didn't matter anymore. What matters now is that I'm on my own path, moving forward, and my love is waiting ahead. Watching her look at me deeply before turning around, her figure thin and solitary. My girlfriend came over with a little cake and softly asked who that was. Pulling my attention back, I took her hand, smiled unconcernedly. "Just an ordinary friend I've known since childhood."